I'm very honored to introduce Dr. Marisol Morales, who has so generously agreed to speak to us from her vacation in her motherland of Puerto Rico. Marisol has served as the Vice President for Network Leadership for Campus Compact. For those of you who don't know, Campus Compact is a national coalition of colleges and universities committed to the public purpose of higher education. Their mission is we build democracy through civic education and community development. Dominican has been a member for the 17 years that I've been on the job. It was the first time I begged money was to, not the last, it was to join members of Campus Compact. And I don't know if Elaine is here, Elaine Akeda is our fantastic leader of our California state office. So in this role of VP since 2018, VP of Network Leadership, Dr. Morales provides guidance, inspiration, and practical support to network staff across the country, including us, and she's showing up today and really furthering the goals that we all share. So you see she leads the efforts to increase inclusion, equity, and diversity internally, which is super important, and in higher education community engagement. She trains and presents regularly on issues related to higher education community engagement and equity. I'll just end by saying Dr. Morales was the founding director of the Office of Civic and Community Engagement at the University of Laverne for 5 years. And before that, she was the associate director of the Stern Center for Community-Based Service Learning and Community Service Studies at DePaul. She holds a BA in Latin American, Latino Studies, and an MS in International Public Service Management from DePaul. She earned her EDD recently, congratulations, in organizational leadership at the University of Laverne. Her dissertation focused on the community engagement experience of Latinx students at a Hispanic serving institution, which is super cool. So thank you so much, Marisol, take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I see some familiar faces and some new friends. So thanks so much for the invitation. This is the only meeting I'm taking during my vacation, and it's because I met Julia many years ago when I was at the University of Laverne and got to know the work of Dominicans. So I'm so excited to be here and talk to you a little bit today. I have to say I really love the title of this time together that we have, because I'm actually reading the book, A Third University is Possible, and it focuses on that idea of radical imagination. And so kind of want to talk to you a little bit about the space that Campus Compact is imagining. Campus Compact has been around for about 36 years, and so we have been an organization that helps support the professionals at our member institutions who are doing this work on the ground. The faculty and the community engagement professionals who are working directly with students and community to make these relationships reciprocal, meaningful, and for the betterment of all. Really with this focus on what is the public purpose of higher education, what is our role in helping to build and sustain democracy, what is our role in helping to educate a diverse and engaged citizenry. And so with that, we, like any other institution, much like our higher ed institutions, have fallen also into the practices of white supremacy, have fallen into the practices of charity-minded engagement, have fallen into the practices of ways that don't always honor the different ways of knowing. But I want to say that I think probably before I got here, and Elaine's on the call, and I'm happy to see her. Campus Compact started thinking differently about what is our role, what is the university's role, particularly when it comes to engaging our communities. What is the university's role as we are working to support a more diverse student body, and how do we begin to embody that? So I want to talk a little bit about kind of what we're seeing currently nationally, the kinds of conversations that are happening, and the ways in which Campus Compact is beginning to sort of chart new pathways, engage in that radical imagination, to really think about how do we make a different university possible, right? How do we create spaces that truly work towards decolonization, that works towards creating spaces of inclusion, of full participation, and also ways that we can reimagine what our democracy looks like, because we know what has been revealed to us most recently in the racial justice movement, as well as with the pandemic, is that we are not all impacted and served by this democracy in the same way. And so how do we begin from this point to really reimagine what our nation can be and what our university spaces can be? So I came to university kind of working in higher education kind of haphazardly. I was a community partner for many years with DePaul in Chicago, and I was hosting service learning students. But really my kind of crumbs trace back to when I was a student at DePaul, and got reintroduced to my Puerto Rican community through an ethnic studies course that I took at DePaul. And it really transformed my education. This is why I both love this work of community engagement and also am deeply critical of it. Because I think without that kind of criticality, we really can't do that radical imagination. We really can't move towards continuous improvement and think about the ways in which we are doing things differently. And so sort of tracing back to my time as a student and then hosting students as a community partner, I was really able to engage in conversations with our university partners differently. What it meant for me as a community partner to host students, to make sure that the things that I wanted, that I needed as a community partner, those needs were met in my relationship with the university. And then moving to the university, how I work towards balancing that with the needs of like faculty, tenure and promotion, research, those sorts of things, the needs of community and the needs of students. And so I think that those of us who engage in this work, who are creating spaces for that coming together, we're deeply rooted in this idea of relationships. And so that's kind of what I want to talk to you about and where we're thinking differently. I think right now there's been sort of, especially with the racial justice movements of this past summer, there's been an awareness that institutions have come to. Students have been pushing this for a while. I think faculty of color and our allies have been pushing this for a while, but the university is being held to account on the statements that they are making, right? That's great that you can make a statement, but how are you doing the work? How are you creating spaces of inclusion? How are you creating spaces of equity? How are you, reflecting on your own reputation of harm? And so that's one of the things that Campus Compact has been working on, particularly through our civic action plans. In 2016, during our 30th year anniversary, our board put forth these civic action statements that were recommitting member institutions to the ideas of the public purpose of higher education, what our role is in educating students for a diverse democracy, and also the responsibility that we had both internally and with our community partners to really engage in meaningful reciprocal relationships. And as part of that kind of evolution of our civic action plans, we've had over 100 institutions participate and submit civic action plans, but we began asking member institutions to think about their own reputation of harm, right? What are those relationships? What would the community say? And we saw a number of institutions doing this, right? Georgetown, in its recognition of its participation in the slave trade and the push, particularly of students right, around reparations and acknowledgement of that. We saw places like Brown and other institutions beginning this process of owning those particular reputations of harm, that particular history with the community as a way towards moving towards reconciliation. We think that's a really important piece of what this kind of transformative relationship can look like. The other piece that we've seen is a deep interest in the work around anti-racism. And what does that mean within the context of community engagement? Some of the things that we have done and where we have seen kind of a lot of movement is we just finished our first anti-racism community of practice, where we brought together a diverse group, about 40 individuals. Half the group was white, half the group were BIPOC individuals, to really engage in these conversations about what does race and racism look like on campus, what are opportunities, activities, conversations, dialogues that need to happen around anti-racism, and how does that impact what we do personally, right? What am I doing as an individual to move towards anti-racism, doing my own reflection and my own work, but then what am I willing to do as part of a collective and also within my institutions to begin to move these conversations forward. So we had that. We also had, and we're going on to our second cohort of our Engaged Scholars Initiative. And so that is a program that's geared towards early career faculty and community engagement professionals, really deeply focused on issues of equity and inclusion, as well as community engaged leadership. And so our hope is that that program will help develop leaders in our institutions in the future to begin to continue this work that we need. And within those spaces, one of the most poignant pieces that has come out of it has been the ways in which our institutions have, in many ways, been toxic to the individuals that are working there, right? And so to engage in this radical imagination also means acknowledging, right, the toxic nature that we have in higher ed sometimes, the individualism, the competitiveness, but then thinking about what could be different. And where can community engagement be situated, right, within the institution to move forward a different kind of university, a different kind of college. So that's where the idea of the third university is possible. One that focuses on love, right? And so for Campus Compact, the framing of our equity work is around love, living out our value of equity. So how do we live that out? Part of it is, as an institution, how do you begin to recognize and identify the obstacles or the barriers to full participation, right? For your students, for your community partners, for your faculty and staff. And then how do you work towards addressing or eliminating those barriers so that all can participate fully in the institution, in the community, so that we can move towards thriving, right, as the goal, not just surviving. One of the things that the pandemic has showed us, is really this idea of, sunshine being the best disinfectant, was the depth of inequities that folks experience. And I know you all are in Marin County, and as an institution where you're situated, probably saw a lot of that with your community partners, who were essential workers, right? Who had to go in, whose kids were left alone, or had to figure out schooling, access to the internet, who was getting sick, right? And so with this kind of realization, or the sort of the sheet being taken off, what was your responsibility as an institution? Was it to sit back? Was it to wait? Was it to just operate from home? Or was it to figure out what were the possibilities? Where did imagination come in? Where did problem solving come in? Where did mutual aid come in? And so what we're seeing nationally is that many institutions had to work with risk management to figure out what was possible and what was not. Many institutions have had to push the boundaries of their own knowledge and understanding. to see what was possible and to create new possibilities. And many institutions also had to think deeply about which community partnerships they kept, right? Where were the areas of most need? And then which ones did they have to sort of put on the side or do differently? And I think that as an organization that looks towards, you know, thinking about this work differently, as an organization that tries to help move the field in a forward direction, that is deeply focused now on issues of equity and inclusion, you know, I think we're at the cusp of what this field will be. I think Dominican early on, Julia and others participated in some of our webinars, and we're asking these deep questions and challenging. And I think you all took on this challenge in this moment of really being responsive to the community that needed the most support. And that's how we move towards deeper imagination, radical imagination. That is how we move towards creating possibilities that are not just for the moment of COVID, but have to become deeply rooted in the way our institutions participate and engage with our local community. So I commend the work that you did in this time of stress, but it's often those times of stress that allow us the space and freedom to think radically, to think differently, and to engage in ways that we would have never thought of had we not been put in this situation. And that is part of resilience, and the communities that you're working with are deeply resilient and will move you to be a more resilient and responsive institution. So thank you so much for the invitation. I'm happy to answer questions offline. I will throw my email in the chat, and hopefully I get to come back and we can engage more in this kind of conversation. Thank you so much, Julia and everyone.
Thank you, Marisol.